So now, Julia, these are hard questions, you guys. So Julia, good questions though. Julia says, how to find the time to sit and scrap when you work full time and run your errands on the weekends, not to mention that you feel exhausted from work and have no oomph to be creative. And a couple people said, I hear ya, and are struggling to find the will to scrap. And there's another question coming up about that down a little bit further too. So I will speak to this as much as I can. So as far as finding the time to scrapbook, the more you can structure your time, the easier it is to have the time that you need to do the things that you need to do. It sounds a lot more simple than it actually is. So what you need to do is really prioritize scrapbooking and put it in your calendar. That will probably help. So for me, I almost can't use myself because I have a more flexible job than most people where I get to decide which days I work and which days I don't work. But I have decided to cram my work week. So I still work 35 to 37 hours a week, which is 37 and a half is considered full time here. So I do still work my paid job that I actually make money at, decent money at, pretty much full time. But it's crammed into 2 really long days and then 1 just regular length day. And so because of that, I have 2 extra days of the week. And during the school year, my kids are in school for those 2 days. So I literally have the whole full 2 days to scrapbook if I wanted to. So what I typically do is I scrapbook one of those days, and then the other day I spend doing this kind of thing, or like YouTube channel management, or planning things, or working on a class, or sometimes I need to do extra readings or prep work for my other job, or I have to run errands like go get groceries or do menu planning and that sort of thing. So I have at least one dedicated scrap day a week, and a good part of the time I have 2 a week. And then I also have things like Friday nights and weekends. I tend to get up early to scrapbook. I know not everybody is an early riser, but usually if you're not an early riser, then you might be more likely to be a night owl. So you can also stay up late to scrapbook as well. But you have to be mindful that if you're cutting into your sleep, that is going to have an impact on your energy level and your mood and anxiety and all those sorts of things. So be careful that you're not compromising your sleep. But if you know how much sleep you need to feel healthy and happy, so as long as you're getting that, it's okay to stay up late scrapbooking or to get up early to scrapbook like I do sometimes. So the first thing is prioritize it and put it in your schedule if you possibly can. If you have less control over your work schedule, and especially like when you have kids that are younger and they really need a lot of you. I mean, the reality is that I just didn't scrapbook very much when my kids were that age. It wasn't until my kids were in school that I really had enough time to really scrapbook as much as I really felt like I needed and wanted to scrapbook. So it might be that you just have to get through, if you have little kids, you might just have to get through that phase with scrapbooking just whenever you can. But know that it won't always be like this, and when they're off in school, it does get easier because their schedule is more predictable, and they are more independent when they're that age too. What else did I want to say about this? Because there's another question, so I don't want to say everything that's on my mind about this right now. So this one is just saying, how do I find the time? So really just prioritizing it and sticking to it. So when Monday comes, even if I don't feel like scrapbooking, I still come down and bring out some supplies, and I just start moving stuff around on the page and on my workspace, and eventually I get into the groove of doing it. So I think that's important too, is that once you've scheduled the time, it's important that you use it even if you don't feel like it. So I try to scrapbook even though I may not feel like it after the kids leave on the bus and I'm home and I've got this time. Sometimes all I want to do is sit down on the couch and watch TV. But I try to not do that. I know if I sit down, it's hard to get back up. So I just try to make it a habit of just coming right down here. And you don't have to have a whole day like I have. So, like I said, I almost don't like using myself as an example because I don't think it's typical that people have as much control over their time as I have. But I think sometimes we feel like, oh, if I can't just sit down and do it the way that I want to do it, then there's no point in doing it at all. And I think that you really sell yourself short when you have that kind of an approach, because what happens is, if you wait to have 5 hours to scrapbook or 2 hours to scrapbook, then you may just have to not scrapbook very often, because a lot of adults just don't have that kind of time. It's not you, it's just that's the way the world is. And so if you're willing to say, okay, I've got an hour, I'm going to go down and get something started, even if I have to walk away, or I'm going to, go pull out some supplies to my dining room table and just, if it takes 10 minutes to get the supplies all sorted the way I want them to be, I still have 50 minutes or maybe, 40 minutes anyways, and then 10 more minutes to get it all cleaned up again. That's still 40 minutes to do something and to feel like you made some progress on the hobby that you love to do. So, and then, like if you've got kids coming and going and you're tending to them, then maybe you can leave it there for a while, do a little, like make them some lunch and then put them down for a nap, and then come back to your dining room table and do it again for another 40 minutes or an hour or whatever. Try to take advantage of those little tiny windows of time, even if it might not be optimal. So even if you know yourself that you scrapbook better when you can just get into it and spend 2 or 3 hours just scrapbooking, and we all love that. But if you insist on having that in order to scrapbook, then the natural consequence of that approach is that you're just not going to be able to scrapbook as often. So if you want to make scrapbooking be part of your more everyday life, then you have to be willing to take those little opportunities and just make the most of what you have for that time. And hopefully you'll sometimes have times where, your partner might take the kids and you can just focus on scrapbooking for a whole day or something like that if it's really important to you. So I hope that that helped, and I do have more to say about that when another question comes up. So Lynette wants to know, I would love to hear about what photo editing apps scrapbookers are using. So if you use a photo editing app, please leave a comment below and let Lynette know what you use. And I will leave you some links to some of the apps that I use. So I use Snapseed a lot for editing my photos in a realistic way. So if I just want them to be brighter or the color to be a little bit more true or for them to be a little bit sharper, I use Snapseed. And I have a video about how to use Snapseed. If I want to have a more artistic look, then I tend to use Hipstamatic because I love the filters, and I have another video all about why I love Hipstamatic and a little bit about how to use it. So I'll link that as well. And then I also use Instagram, and I don't have a video about Instagram, but that's kind of like my main place that I collect my photos for scrapbooking. So I use my Instagram account both as a place to share my work, but I also use it as kind of like a running timeline of all the things I'd like to scrapbook. So if I'm out someplace and I snap a picture, I'll just post it to Instagram right away with a caption, and then I can use that caption for my journaling, and I can use the photo the next time I'm scrapbooking. Those are my main ways that I edit photos. I also edit photos on just the Photos app on my computer, but I only do very minimal. Usually I'll just change the levels just to get a little bit truer. Like when I change the levels, what it does is it brightens up the brights and it darkens up the darks so that you get kind of like a true black instead of like a grainy gray, and you get kind of like just more vividness to your photos. And so that's about the only thing that I change on my computer. Sometimes if I'm scrapbooking multiple photos and I've already run them through a filter on Instagram, and I have a companion photo that I want to use that hasn't been run through Instagram, I'll either just post it to Instagram right then so that I can get the filter, or I have a couple of filters on my Photos application that they're not very good filters, but one of them looks a lot like Clarendon, and so if I've used the Clarendon filter on Instagram, I'll just run it through the filter there. But that's really, I don't do a whole lot of photo editing. I try to just capture the moment in my camera, and I mostly just use phone photos. Like I really only use my my DSLR for taking pictures of my layouts, and for doll photography and miniature photography and that sort of thing. So, and I don't usually scrapbook that stuff. So I'm mostly working with iPhone photos, and I just try to get it nice in the photo itself so I don't have to do a lot of editing. And mainly the main way that I do that is I just touch the screen and then I just flick up to increase the exposure as I'm taking it, because usually that's what I'm wanting to do, is just brighten it up a little bit as I take it. So if you guys use photo editing apps, please leave the information in a comment below so that Lynette can look at that and everybody else can have a look as well. I know a lot of scrapbookers use Pick Tap Go. I don't use that, so I can't really speak very much about it, but it's so popular it must be a pretty good one. Diane wants to know, she says, I would love to know how you print from your phone to your Epson PictureMate charm. So my answer to that is that I don't usually print from my phone to my Epson PictureMate charm, because when I print from my phone, and you have to have it set up some way, because my PictureMate charm is the older one, which does not have Wi-Fi built into it. So what I've had to do is connect it to my computer, and then my husband has something put on my computer. It might be called, I don't know what it's called. I'm going to say it wrong and put you guys on a wild goose chase. He's not home, so I can't tell you what it is. But he has an app on my computer that basically allows, it kind of like hosts my printer so that my printer becomes wireless, and then I can choose it from my phone. But I don't, because I don't have as many options for how to print. So it always prints it. It fills a 4x6 piece of paper with my photos. So I end up with most of my photos are square. So I end up with a 4x4 inch photo when I print from my phone. And that's very rarely what I want. So I almost never print from my phone for scrapbooking. I always print from my computer. There is a way to print from your phone, and it has to do with getting a separate piece of software. That software is free, but I don't know what it's called. So I'll get back to you on that. So Jenny says, do you have any systems for tracking which stories and photos you've already scrapped when you're not scrapping chronologically? And a few people commented that they'd like to know about this too. And Raylyn says that she tries to only print a picture once, and once she prints it, she puts it in a separate folder on her computer. I'm not going to be very helpful for these kinds of questions because I don't think too much about how I store my photos, and I'm a very immediate scrapbooker, so when I sit down to scrapbook, I'm mostly just thinking about the past week, what's happened, and what might I want to scrapbook. And so sometimes I'll look back as far as a couple of weeks, but I rarely scrapbook back any further than that. And because I only get to scrapbook a couple times a week, there's usually way more stuff happening, and everything that I've scrapbooked is in recent memory because I've done it so recently. And also, you have to remember that I do everything twice because I scrapbook it and then I also narrate it. So, and I take pictures and put it on Flickr, and I process things a lot before it goes into the album. So I usually know what I've scrapbooked recently, and because I only scrapbook recent photos, it's not an issue for me. Sometimes I will go back and scrapbook an older photo, and if that's the case, I'm doing it for a reason, and I feel like I have a story I want to tell, and it's more about the process of telling. I almost don't care if I've already scrapbooked it because I want to scrapbook it now, so I'll scrapbook it now and have it twice. It's okay with me if it's in my album twice. So that's the way I approach that, but I am probably a lot less formal and thinking about those things than a lot. Like, I think that it's a valid thing to think about, and I can understand how that would be a problem for some people, but it's just not for me. So therefore, I don't have a good answer to your question based on my own personal experience. So maybe if anybody else watching this has anything to say to Jenny about that, please leave a comment below. I think the idea of kind of printing up your photos all at once and then working your way through the stack, and then you know that you can't scrapbook it twice because you don't have two copies of anything. That's, I guess, would be another pretty good way to do it. Another thing would be if you're, even if you're not scrapping chronologically, you could put it in your albums chronologically. And so then if you're, like if you've got a picture of somebody's wedding, for example, and you're like, oh, that was 5 years ago, did I ever scrapbook this? You can just go to that album and say, is it in there? And if it is, it's been scrapbooked. And if it isn't, then it hasn't. So, but yeah, that's a good question. So if anybody else has any ideas for Jenny, please leave us a comment below. Ro wants to know about collage apps, and I will just answer this one super quick, and I'll put it on my list of videos to make. So I use Diptych for collages, and that is a very old app, but it's still relevant and they still keep updating it. I like it because it's simple, maybe because I've been using it for so long. There are a lot of collage apps out there, so if other people have their favorites that they'd like to chime in about, leave a comment below because I'd love to hear what else is out there. I personally, until they stop keeping Diptych updated with whatever the iOS is, I don't plan to change the app that I'm using because it's so easy and reliable that I just don't want to bother learning something else. So I will show you Diptych in a separate video if you're interested, and in the meantime, anybody else who has any suggestions for Ro, please leave a comment below. So Alex says, here's the question that I knew I was going to get to eventually. So Alex says, I think it's my anxiety getting the better of me, which oddly enough, I remedy by scrapping. But sometimes I get into this funk of feeling silly and like I'm wasting my time and money. Do you ever have an ugh, does this even matter moment? And how do you get to break through that thought process? LOL, I'm asking both Tracy Banks therapist and MercyTiara scrapbooker. So you're asking both of my personas. So a couple of people chimed in and said, yes, they're kind of struggling with same things and thinking about the mental health aspect of having a hobby that takes both time and money away from other stuff. And then somebody else is saying, oh my gosh, I'm so relieved to hear other women feel the same way. Sometimes when I'm scrapbooking or dealing with all the products I own, I think, what is this all about? By the way, I don't have children. Okay. So I think I'm going to talk a little, I need a visual aid. I need a visual aid for this. I have talked about this before. So if you've heard this before, I don't know, go get yourself a cup of coffee because I have more to say. So go make a coffee while I talk about, I'm going to talk about the cup. So you guys, a lot of you guys already know the cup. So how am I going to say this? So this is our cup of well-being. So what we do is we need to fill our cups up, and we need to fill our own cups before we give anything to anybody else. So a lot of people that I see in therapy, they come to me when their cup is depleted. Their cup is like this. And when your cup is that full, you feel bad. It does not feel good to have that much in your cup. What we need is we need to fill our cups all the way to the very top in order to be optimally well. It's not enough to just feel like this, to have this much. I'll talk about how you put stuff in your cup in a second. But it's not enough to have your cup be only up to there or mostly full or even to here. You need your cup to be all the way full. When your cup is all the way full and you keep putting in your cup, what happens is you have overflow. And that overflow is what you give to the world. So if you have, like, that's when you help your sister move apartments, and you know, help your neighbor who's in a moment of need, or you go across the street and shovel that person's driveway because you know they just fell and broke their hip, or whatever the case might be. When you keep your cup really full, you have energy and resources to be able to help other people, which is what we all like to do, right? And many of the people who I meet really give too much of themselves, and they give so much to other people, whether it's their kids or their partners or their jobs or whatever the case might be, that they are depleted. Now, what we do to fill our cups is 4 things. These are the 4 pillars of good mental health. You guys are gonna be so annoyed with me. So we've got, I'm getting very teachy here. Hang on, bear with me. Okay, so these are the 4 pillars of good mental health. Can you see those? We have we're going to start here. We have sleep. You need to be getting the right amount of sleep. For most people, that's about 8 hours of sleep. It could be more, it could be less, depending on your own individual body. We need exercise, and humans, we need about 30 minutes of that a day in order to feel our best and to be our healthiest, or anywhere between 30 and 60, but really 30 makes the biggest difference. And then we need nutrition, and if our body does not have all of the nutrients that it needs, it gets pretty stressed out and gives you signs of anxiety and low mood and so on. And then balance. And so these three things are pretty straightforward. I mean, you can measure how much sleep you're getting, and if you're having trouble sleeping, you can go to see somebody who can help you with that. Exercise is the kind of thing that most people struggle to have enough of. You can put it into your calendar just like you do your scrapbooking, anything that's a priority to you, so that you definitely get your exercise. You will have more energy if you exercise. So a lot of people say, I don't have time for exercise, but what you'll find is that if you exercise consistently, you will actually have more efficiency in your day that will more than make up for the 30 minutes that you're losing, because you're not really losing it, to exercise. It's an investment. It's an investment in you, and it's definitely worthwhile to exercise and to sleep and to get your proper nutrition. So in order to get your proper nutrition, you probably have to invest some time or money into meal planning and meal preparation. And like I said, if you're not getting enough, you will know it. You will feel bad and be unwell. So make sure that you're tending to that one as well. So the one that I usually spend the most time talking to people about is balance. And what I mean by balance is a balance between work and leisure. So we need to be doing enough work that everything gets done. So you need to be doing enough work that you can pay your bills and feel good that you're doing well at your job and you're not going to get fired and it's not causing you too much stress, right? So you need to do enough. You just have to put in hours at work to do this if you have a job that you go to that you're paid for. But also, I mean, work around your house. Like, you need to do your laundry so that tomorrow when you go to work or go out, you're not stressed out because you can't find anything and all your clothes are wrinkly and then you feel bad and you have to kind of like find an iron and run around the house and be stressed out, right? So you have to do all of the work that you need to do in order to feel okay. And for everybody, that's a different amount, right? So some people can feel perfectly relaxed in a house that has clutter all over the place, and other people get really, really stressed out if there's clutter. So do whatever you need to do so that all the work gets done. And then you also have to have leisure. And scrapbooking for most people falls under leisure. And it is actually a very important part of being healthy. It's one part of this pillar that's very important for holding up your mental health. So if scrapbooking is something you love, you actually have to scrapbook in order to feel well. So scrapbooking becomes one of these things that goes in your cup. It's not the overflow. I'm not saying do all this stuff and then scrapbook. Scrapbook as a way to fill up your cup. It adds to your cup. So doing all four of these things in the ratio that you need to feel healthy in your life circumstance is one of the things that you do to fill your cup. So every day you do that, you get a little bit more in your cup, a little bit more in your cup, a little bit more in your cup. Also, another way that you add things to your cup, add amounts to your cup, is by being true to yourself. So things like, facing a fear that you need to face, or standing up for someone standing up for your beliefs in situations, even when it's really hard, being your real true self and not putting on a front for your friends. All of those sorts of things are ways that you add to your cup. If you add to your cup on a consistent basis by doing these things and also things that allow you to be true to yourself, you will feel more balanced than if you're not doing these things enough, right? And nobody ever feels perfectly balanced, and it is a work in progress. And most people find that their cup kind of varies in terms of, most healthy people, their cup is somewhere around here. But we want our goal to always be to fill our cup. And so for me, for example, I have recently rediscovered Frasier, and I was sitting on the couch watching Frasier and I was laughing my head off and it was so funny. And I had this moment of thinking, what am I doing here wasting my time? Maybe I should be doing something else. And then I thought to myself, when was the last time I laughed? And I thought very hard about that, and it occurred to me that I actually don't remember the last time I laughed, and that is a problem, right? Because laughing and leisure is a part of this part of my pillar. And so obviously I had been neglecting that, and I thought to myself, this is an investment in me. Sitting here watching 22 minutes of this show is actually a good use of my time. My dishes were washed. I didn't have anything pressing to do for work. I was actually waiting to go someplace. I had a work event I had to go to, and I had, 40 minutes to spare. So I thought, I will watch this show before I gather up my belongings and get myself ready to go. And it was an investment in myself. So you can't think about it as, oh, that's a waste of time. Nobody's ever going to look at my layouts. What's the point of doing that? If you enjoy it, it is an investment in yourself, and it fills your cup, and it is worthwhile. So that's all the lecturing I'm going to do to you guys. Sorry about that. But I thought that that might be helpful for some people to hear. Then Paula says, I might be the only person with this issue, but here goes. I love going on Pinterest to look for scrappy inspiration, completed layout sketches, and so on. But when it comes time to scrap, I never remember to look at all the things I've spent hours pinning. How do you remember to look at sketches or inspiration layouts? I don't plan anything in advance when scrapping, and I keep thinking that it would save so much time if I occasionally used a sketch or something. Then a couple of people chimed in and said, me too. They plan to print them, and then they maybe put them in a binder. And I think that's a good idea. Some people said that they need something visually in front of them, and having it on Pinterest is not as helpful. So Pinterest. So here's the thing. If you're spending more time on Pinterest and managing your inspiration, whether it's Pinterest or Facebook or Instagram or whatever it is that you're on, if you're spending more time on that than you're spending scrapbooking, then think about your cup and think about, does Pinterest fill your cup? And if so, that's great. Maybe it does. And then keep on doing that. But if you feel like actually scrapbooking would fill your cup at a greater rate than, like maybe Pinterest puts a couple drops in your cup, but scrapbooking puts a good jigger into your cup, then maybe you might want to trade some of the time that you spend pinning for some time scrapbooking, especially if when it comes to scrapbooking, you're not actually looking at your pins. Because that means that really they might be inspiring you in that they're all going into your mind, and then you'll draw upon those ideas when you're scrapbooking, and maybe in a way that you don't quite know. And so it would be hard for you to say, oh, I thought of this pin that I was using. But, it all kind of gets jumbled up in there and comes out in our creativity, right? So that's not to say that Pinterest isn't inspiring you just because you're not drawing on it specifically as you scrapbook, but you might want to think about how much time you're spending on Pinterest. And I don't know, you don't really say in the question here, but it sounds like you might be wondering whether you are spending your time efficiently. And I think that when you're spending your time, when you think about efficiency of time, you want to think about your cup, because some things might not seem like they're an efficient use of your time, but maybe they are. If they put a lot of liquid in your cup, then you're good to go, right? So I guess you have to think about how much joy and personal fulfillment do you get from Pinterest just as a thing on its own, and how much joy and personal fulfillment do you get from scrapbooking. And I mean, Pinterest is something you can do while you're sitting in the doctor's office waiting for an appointment, whereas scrapbooking isn't, right? So if you're using it at the right times in a way that works for you, then there's no problem with that. But if you feel like you'd rather scrapbook more and pin less, then be mindful of the time that you're spending online. And if you could spend it doing something different, even, maybe, okay, well, it's right before supper and I can't scrapbook right now. But if you can get the bathroom cleaned right now, then later when you would have done your chores, you could scrapbook instead, right? So if you can take those little bits of time that you spend on social media and put them into doing little bits of something else that will then be done and free you up to scrapbook, you can trade your time that way, right? And then you're filling your cup more efficiently throughout the day, if that makes sense. But yeah, so some people, if you're just wondering how do I use Pinterest more efficiently, I think printing up your Pinterest, your pins might be helpful. Or maybe having your phone with you while you're scrapbooking so that you can pull up the board that you're looking at and flick through it. Those are the things that kind of strike me as being helpful. You can also, if you have trouble printing straight from Pinterest, because I don't actually even know how you would do that, but you can screen cap your pins, right? And then just print the screen cap. Betsy says, do you have a wide format printer, and wants to know my opinions on them and loves my product reviews. So I posted a couple of videos there for her because I actually do have a wide format printer. I have a Canon Pixma Pro 100, and I will link those here as well. But I love my Canon Pixma Pro 100. I love it. It's a great wide format printer. It's beautiful quality. It's a higher end. It's not the cheapest wide format printer you can get, but it's really, really beautiful quality prints. Then Melanie says, I would like to know if you have a scrapbooking bucket list of things you would like to try but haven't as of yet. You know, this is on my bucket list. Where is it? This is on my bucket list. I want to use this. I need to use this. This is by Maggie Holmes, and it's a couple years old now. It came in a kit that I got a long time ago, and I said, I have to use that. And then I proceeded to ignore it. And then when I dekitted, I had to put it away, and it's been sitting there, and I've been planning to use it, and I haven't used it yet. So that's on my bucket list. I want to use that giant wood veneer heart on a project. That's on my bucket list. I can't think of anything else that's on my bucket list, only because I tend to try something when it comes out. Like, for example, foil. I got some foil when it came out. I tried it out. It's not really my thing. Like, I don't mind foil, but I'm really more likely to just buy things that already have foil on it. I don't need to be able to have the capacity to put foil on stuff in my own unique way. Oh yeah, I'm not really answering your question. I'm telling you what's not on my bucket list. Yeah, I'm lucky because I have the opportunity to try a lot of new things when they come out, and I typically just incorporate it into my scrapbooking style if I like it, and then if I don't, it just kind of falls on the wayside like foil did. Yeah, I guess I would really like to be able to use my Cameo more often. It's right there, and I do really enjoy using it when I use it, but I have some type of a psychological barrier that keeps me from wanting to pull it out, even though I specifically put it there so that I would use it, and it's easy for me to use. I just pop it up on top of my printer. But I have this idea that I don't want to ever use the computer when I'm scrapbooking, which is a silly idea, isn't it? I should argue with that one. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so if we're talking bucket list, real scrapbook related bucket list, this isn't something I'd like to do to scrapbook, but I would love to go to CHA someday. I would love to go to CHA. I do feel a little divided about it. Like, a part of me thinks that that would be really overwhelming and too socially outgoing for me. I am socially outgoing, but that seems like it would be a lot. I'm an outgoing introvert, which means I am an introvert, but I also really love socializing. So yeah, I think I would like CHA, but I think I would only want to do it once, and just to kind of do it, right? Like, I think there's something exciting about just being there and seeing all the new product, like, face to face right there. But yeah. So that would be my bucket list thing. Thank you guys for all these great questions. They're really awesome. So Birdie says, can you talk about when you first started scrapping, what you did before you had a mini warehouse worth of stash to access to so much new product? I scrap on a zero budget. I buy almost nothing and stash all it fits into a Rascog Yes, all of it, including paper, stamps, and stickers, everything. So you guys just saw pictures of my scrap room from back before I had a mini warehouse. I have been very lucky, and I have received a lot of supplies from manufacturers and from kit clubs, which supports my channel and allows me to keep on bringing you guys videos. I really wouldn't be able to do so many videos and so many relevant videos in a timely manner if I didn't have supplies coming in so easily to me. So thank you so much to everybody who supports my channel, whether it's the manufacturers who send me stuff, the kit clubs who send me stuff, or just people who have new products and want me to try it, or if it's people who support me through Patreon or through buying my classes or using my affiliate links. I appreciate it all, and it all goes back into my channel. I really, really appreciate being in a position where I can have so much stuff. And a lot of the stuff that I do have, I have accumulated over the years of scrapbooking. I don't purge probably as much as I should. And I probably have stuff that I will never use in here. But I try to be generous too, and I do a lot of giveaways, especially I try to do giveaways soon after I know I won't use it, so it's not all old stuff that I'm giving away. I like to give away more relevant things. I give away stuff every month in my 27-day challenge. So you guys, that was a bit of a tangent, but you guys saw my scrap room from when it was smaller, and back then I just used what I had access to. It was almost all stuff from Michael's, and almost all bought on their, you know, like I would buy one thing at a time with their 50% off coupon, and I'd just go in and say, yay, I have a paper pad now. And I didn't have much to choose from, and so I did a lot of making my own embellishments. I don't do that nearly as much now because I have packaged stuff that just comes in kits, and I don't need to make my own embellishments. But early on, if I wanted a flower, I would take a Prima, or if I wanted a butterfly, for example, I would take a Prima flower and pull off one of the petals and put a little paper clip on it to make it look like little antennas and a body, and I would make it into a flower and put stickles around it to make it look like it's all one piece. And I was always looking up ideas on how to make my own things because I just didn't have much supplies, and I had a whole lot of ink so that I could make things the colors I wanted. I could die cut things out of white and then mist it and ink it and change the color to be what I needed it to be. I used my punches a lot. I used my tools a whole lot back then, like a lot. And so that is one way that you can really stretch your supplies and get the most out of everything. I also kept all of my scraps, and that is something that I still do to this day, and I still draw from my scraps. In fact, I draw from my scraps so much that I rarely even have to reach into my paper supply, which is why it keeps growing. Okay, so then this sounds like a fun question. Britty, sorry, I called her Birdie. Sorry, it's Britty. Britty also asked, if you could only have 4 extra things to embellish a layout, what would you choose if you have your pattern paper and plain cardstock, glue, etc., and photos? Everything else is extra. So my go-to extra things for embellishing would be, my favorite is chipboard, printed chipboard. Like this, for example. Printed chipboard, if I had to pick one thing, I would pick this. This is always the thing that I go for. This is the thing that gets in my cart first when I'm buying a collection. Which luckily I don't have to do all that often anymore. So printed chipboard, printed die cut pieces, rubber pieces, like, oh, we seem to be on a cute girl kick here, like these rubber pieces. What did I say? Chipboard pieces, printed die cut, rubber pieces, puffy stickers, the soft puffy stickers that I love so much, the really soft velvety feeling ones, and thickers, like a nice dimensional sticker. Oh, wait, 4. Okay, I take back the thickers. Those are my favorite, my 4 favorite. And acrylic pieces. maybe acrylic / rubber. Okay, so I don't have many acrylic pieces, so you don't see them on my layouts very often, but I really do love using them. Melanie says, do you ever correct or enhance your photos before printing them? Rarely, and I already talked about that in another question. Thank you for asking. But yes, mostly just send it through Instagram and that's it. Melanie says, I'm really looking forward to this video and hearing your thoughts on these questions, especially about kits being in Canada. A lot of brick and mortar stores have closed and a kit can feel like the best option, but our dollar, sometimes I do not feel like it's better for me to I feel like it's better for me to shop online for the pieces I want and will use from a collection. Well, I mean, that's just the thing about kits, right? You make a really, really good point, Melanie, which is that, you know, especially if you have a kit that comes and there's a certain amount of the kit that you wouldn't even buy yourself, and then when you're left with what's left, you have to kind of think about what's the retail value of those things, including shipping and handling and exchange and all those sorts of things. I mean, for us in Canada, we're paying exchange and shipping on everything anyways, whether even if you buy it from an LSS, they've paid the shipping and they pass that cost on to us. Rightfully so. I mean, they have to make money too. So I mean, it's one of those things. It's costly if you're not in America and you're scrapbooking. That's just the way it is. It's a more expensive hobby for the rest of the world than it is for Americans, just because of shipping alone. There's just so many of the products that we love come from the United States. The thing about the Kit Club is you don't have to shop every month and you get new supplies coming in every month. And if you can afford it, if it's in your budget, then you know that that's all you're spending. Because I know there were times when I was subscribed to Studio Calico and I would also still go shopping online and I would still go to Michael's sometimes too. That was a lot of spending that I was doing, a lot of spending. And if then for a good long time, what I would do is I would only subscribe to Studio Calico, and that was all I would use. The only other thing I would buy would be glue. And so I wouldn't get any new stamps. I wouldn't get any new dies. I wouldn't get anything new. And I would go months and months and months like that. So in that case, if you can stick to a budget like that, then sometimes a Kit Club is actually a cheaper route, because when you're buying these, especially a collection that just came out, you just want all of it. Like I remember, you know, trying to get new Dear Lizzie stuff when the Neapolitan collection first came out. And I was like, I want it all. I want it all. And I didn't use it all. And some of it came in a kit, and it came in a kit mixed in with other things. And I ended up really not using a good part of that collection, and I probably could have just gone with the kit and I would have still had the new stuff and not had all of the every single thing in the kit or in the collection. So Monique says, do you plan on making more mini albums? And I know Monique loves mini albums. And so yes, I do plan on making mini albums. In fact, just before I got sick in the spring, I bought some new mini album dies, and I really can't wait to use them. I bought all these things from Sizzix. I got on this kick where I was like, I'm going to make mini albums. So I bought this set of dies, this set of dies, and this set of dies. I bought these with the money I got from my affiliate links. So thank you. Scrapbook.com had a huge Sizzix sale, and these were like marked down. I can't even remember, but they were really, really well priced. So I got these so that I could do some mini albums, and I do appreciate you guys using my affiliate links. It really does help me be able to do things like say, hey, let's do a series on mini albums. I will get some supplies for that. So I know I didn't have to get 3 different sets of mini album dies, but they were such a good price that I got doubles so that I could give some away. So keep an eye out, and this is not sponsored by Sizzix. This is me sharing the money that I make from my YouTube channel with you guys, the people who help me make the money from my YouTube channel. So I'm going to give these 2 away to 2 different viewers, not on this video, but I am going to do a video about what I bought from Sizzix, including these dies for making mini albums and a few other things. And I also have another Sizzix sponsored thing coming up at some point pretty soon on my channel that I'm just gonna kind of don't tell anybody. But I'm excited about that too. So I know I've been doing a lot of giveaways lately. Make sure that you subscribe to my channel if you don't already, because I've actually noticed that a pretty big portion of my viewers, actually more than between 40 and 50% of the people who view my videos don't even subscribe. So make sure you subscribe, because that way you won't miss anything. And there are a lot of giveaways these days, and that will continue because there's a backlog. I've been kind of gathering things up to give away. So Monique, yes, I will be doing mini albums. I don't know when, because I've got a lot of stuff on the go right now, but soon. I promise it'll be soon. So now Mary says, I do not have a lot of scrapbooking paper, embellishments, etc. I have different sheets of scrapbooking paper. There are some sets, but often there are no coordinating embellishments. In general, my scrap is usually the creation of something from different materials. Usually I make a layout when choosing a photo that will look and what I like best with this photo. It would be very interesting to see if someone does something in a similar way. Yes, I really do think that a lot of scrapbookers scrap that way. It's just possible that the YouTubers don't. And I think that that might be because there's, you know, kit clubs are so popular, but also when you're sharing your process with people via YouTube, it's important that you have kind of like I guess a more streamlined way of doing things, because, you know, like if I walk away from my desk and go rummaging through my supplies, it kind of, I have to turn off the video and then go get it and then come back and then explain what it is. It's much, much easier for me to just scrapbook with a kit because everything is at hand. I'm familiar with the products. I know the brands of it all, so I can tell you what it is if you want to go get it. And it's just a lot easier when you're making process videos. But I think that the way that you describe your scrapbooking is probably the way that most scrapbookers do it. So don't feel like you're doing something wrong or like you're the minority, because I really don't think you are. And everybody just has to do whatever they need to do to enjoy the process, right? So I think that's awesome that you brought that up. And anybody who wants to chime in on that, go ahead and leave a comment below. Veselina says, I have the fear of starting the blank 12 by 12 page. When the perfectionism kicks in, do these papers go together, for example, I get totally stuck. So again, that's another good reason to get a kit, is that you know that the kit, everything, you know, for the most part, I don't really have to think about what goes. If it's in the kit, it probably matches stuff. So it's another benefit to using kits. But if you don't use kits and you still feel like Veselina does, head on over to Find Your Mojo, because in that video, in that video series over on Scrapbooking Cards Today, that's a series that I host over there, and in it, each video includes a prompt to get you started when you feel like you're overwhelmed or don't know how to start. So I'll leave the whole playlist in a link in the information section below. So Coralie, she says, she says, I was watching one of your videos yesterday evening, and my son said, Mom, is that famous YouTuber you met in Halifax? LOL. You've been one of my absolute favorite YouTubers for many years. Oh, you're making me blush, Coralie. My question is, if you could meet a famous YouTuber, who would you like to meet and why? So 2 names pop out right away. Obviously, I would like to meet anybody. I love meeting other scrapbookers and talking about their process and getting to know how different we all are from each other, and having a look at people's scrapbooks, especially people who aren't even YouTubers, right? So I love meeting. I've met a couple of local gals, and they've shown me their books, and I love the stories about how people came to scrapbooking, and it just really, it touches me whenever people share those sorts of things with me. So thank you to everybody who I met locally or at crops and stuff, and who talked to me, because I love meeting scrapbookers. I don't meet scrapbookers in my everyday life, so I love it when that happens. But if I had a chance to meet a YouTuber, 2 names pop into my mind right away for 2 completely different reasons. So firstly, Irit jumps up at me because she has a way of jumping up at people, because she's so awesome. I think the reason her name kind of pops up when I think about this idea of meeting a famous YouTuber that you really want to meet, obviously not doing a great job of communicating right now, but is that I feel like I have a lot in common with Irit. I feel, just from talking to her, I feel like obviously we work together, we collaborate on a series, and we've done some other collaborations together. So we chat fairly often, and I feel like I've gotten to know her a little bit, not a whole lot, but at least a little bit. And I feel like we would mesh easily, like we're similar, and it would feel comfortable really quickly with each other. And so that's always nice, right? Like it's always nice to kind of, you know, feel like you've kind of met one of your people. And I think that's what it would be like if I were to meet Irit, and I would love to meet her someday. The second one that kind of pops into my mind is for a completely different reason, and that's Victoria Marie. I just think that she's very different from me in many ways. She's like a lot more funny and bubbly and outgoing and full of energy, and I just feel like I would love to spend some time with her. I think it would be totally fun, and I just would love to meet her. Obviously, there's tons of scrapbookers who I would love to meet, but those two names just kind of like popped into my head. And I do feel like I have some in common with Victoria as well, but not as much. Like I just don't, I feel like we're different, and that would be really, really fun. And I haven't had as much contact with her as I've had with Irit. So I think that she would be someone who would be really, really fun to meet. So I will link their channels in the information section below. I'm sure you guys all know Irit Landgraf and Victoria Marie, who are obviously very big YouTubers and have very beautiful work and make wonderful content for their channels. Okay, so now Annie has a couple questions. Annie, so we all know that outlining and sewing on a layout are some of your go-to techniques. You are even known for them. I was wondering, what other go-to techniques do you use? And I said, I'm having trouble thinking of others. Perhaps I'm a two-trick pony, and I was going to give it some thought. So I've tried to give some thought, and then Annie said, you're a layering queen. And some other people chimed in and said, I have more tricks than that up my sleeve. So yeah, I think layering, yeah, that's another one that I tend to do a lot. Really outlining, sewing, layering, those are my go-to. I really like to use design principles like repetition and the visual triangle, and what are some of the other ones that I use? Kind of like having a color scheme, and really just kind of like clusters of embellishment, I think are pretty much on all of my layouts. So that, I guess those are what I would consider my go-to techniques. And then Annie has another question. She says, do you have a go-to style, layout style or format that you use when you're stuck or in a time crunch? Absolutely. Yep. And those of you who have been with me for a while might recognize this layout. This design. This is a layout that I made for Scrapbook and Cards Today, and it's on their channel as of today for the Find Your Mojo video. And so the prompt for Find Your Mojo this time was to skip the photo altogether, and the idea is that by not scrapbooking a photo, it kind of takes the pressure off of you, and you can just kind of, you know, you don't have to feel so much like, oh my gosh, this is my daughter's graduation, I have to do a good job on this, right? So you can check out this video on their channel if you're interested in seeing how it comes together. But this is probably my most commonly go-to design, is what I call a ledge layout. And so this piece of paper here that runs the whole horizontal length of the page is the ledge in this design. And then usually there's also some other horizontal papers behind it that have a less subtle ledge look to them. And then usually I also have, just to give it some balance, a vertical element that runs behind the photo. Sometimes it's a couple of strips of paper, sometimes it's one strip like this. Here it's like there's a layer behind there too. And then the ledge holds the photo. Sometimes the title will go here, but in this case it's an embellishment cluster, or sometimes the journaling will go there. So the ledge holds usually two things, my photo and something else. Embellishment cluster, journaling, or title. And then to balance off the weight that kind of is over on this side, I put a secondary cluster up in the opposite opposite side. So sometimes this is over here and the embellishment cluster is up there. But generally speaking, this is my go-to design. I probably have dozens of layouts that have this design. Sorry, I know I was covering myself there. Peekaboo. Yeah, so I probably have dozens of pages that are some variation of this design. Despite how frequently I use it, I don't feel like it gets old, and I don't feel like it looks repetitive in my pages, because each page looks different, because it's different papers, different photos, different titles, and you know, different embellishments. So it's okay to have a go-to design or a couple of go-to designs. I guess another one that I often use is kind of like something in the center and then kind of like sprinkles diagonally around it. There's another common layout design that I use. So thanks for the question. That was a fun one to answer, actually. It was easy to answer because I happened to just have done that like the day before. And then Annie also asks, what is something new that you're enjoying adding the, sorry, I can't read. What is something new that you're enjoying adding to your layouts these days? So what's something new that I'm enjoying adding to my layouts these days? Acrylic, I know acrylic isn't that new, but I love these. Let me find them. These acrylic pieces, I love them. I don't use them often enough because I don't have enough of them. I don't have ones that I like. Like I have some here and I like some of these, but a lot of these I don't really love. And I'm just keeping them because I love that they're acrylic. So someday I'll use some of them. But yeah, I love acrylic and I really love rubber pieces and puffy stickers. Something that's not new is bows. I've been into bows for at least 3 or 4 years of just being obsessive about putting bows on my layout. So those are all the things that I love these days. So Alex asks about long-term storage recommendations for digital photos. I am so sorry, Alex, I can't help you with this one. I'm not a good reference for anything digital. I'm not very digitally inclined. I do okay, like I can do what I need to do on the computer, but it's not my favorite thing to do. I let my husband handle all of that kind of stuff. So he works for Apple and he's also a photographer, so he knows about that sort of thing. And so we have, for the past several years, even before he worked for Apple, we use iCloud to store all of our photos. And it used to be called the Stream. It's called something different now. But basically, all the photos that I take with my phone automatically show up. They're on the cloud and they automatically show up on my computer and on my laptop and on my iPad and on my, like, everything is everywhere. But it's really only in the cloud. So what you see on your phone is like a compressed version of it until you open it up. As soon as you look at it, then it's the full version. And so that's the way we've been managing our photos. And I don't cull anything. Like if I take 25 pictures of Olivia like tying her shoes or the cat doing something funny, I never go back and delete. Like I just favorite one and leave the rest. And I know that that's probably, you know, digitally wasteful in terms of taking up space on the cloud, but we haven't encountered an ending to our cloud storage yet. So for now, I just keep on doing that because it's too much trouble for me to go in and delete things. So I'm definitely not a good person to ask about digital storage because I don't do anything to organize my photos. The only thing that I do is at the moment, I usually pick the one that I like the most and put a heart on it, meaning favorite it. And then it's in my favorites so that when I go to Instagram it, I know which one of the 25 that I took is the one that she has like her eyes open and smiling the right way and that sort of thing. So Irit says that it looks like I have my hands full already with questions. So she's not going to add anything to my job here. And we're already at an hour and 3 minutes just on this clip. And I know I took some clips before this. So this is going to be a long one, guys. Marcy says, how do you make your outlining so smooth and go so fast on it? And she struggles with this, and a couple of other people struggle with it too. And Helen asks, what are my favorite sketches? Do I prefer simple or more elaborate? Those are two good questions. I'm going to table them. I'm sorry. It just seems like, you know what, I went this far. There's only two questions. I'm going to go ahead and do it. So, outlining tips. The best thing to do when you're outlining is to keep your wrist straight. So don't outline like this. Keep your wrist straight with your arm and outline using either your elbow or even your shoulder, like kind of like this kind of a motion. So like this, right? If you go like this, you'll end up going off the page. If you use your wrist, your outlining will be more wobbly. So definitely kind of use your whole arm in a motion. The other thing is to be confident and don't bail out once you start. Like just kind of decide where you're going to start and then just go. It doesn't matter. The faster you go, the straighter your lines will be. And it doesn't matter if you go off, because I go off too. That's why I don't outline on my nice Martha Stewart gray mat, because I often go off the lines. So you'll see I'll turn my layout upside down and outline on top of it. And I'm using this motion as I go, because even when I'm demonstrating it and not thinking, I just automatically, I've outlined for so long that I lock my wrist as I demonstrate. So I always flip something over, and flipping it over and not being worried about messing up your workspace helps you be more confident and just make those lines kind of go all in. If you go off the edge like this, just go back on and start over again. Again, if you're tentative about it, your lines will look more wobbly. If you look back at some of my older layouts from like 2009, 2010, my outlining is more wobbly then than it is now, because it just takes practice. Just start outlining everything. Like just decide, okay, I'm just going to go with outlining for a while. If you outline every layout you make for like 2 months, you will be good at it. So just do it. That's my advice for outlining. Everybody needs to just outline everywhere. Then Helen says, what are your favorite sketches? Do you prefer simple or more elaborate? I actually haven't thought of it that way. I like all of the sketches. I don't think I have a preference for simple or elaborate. I do really like when sketches include layers, like when you can tell that there are different blocks of rectangles all layered together. Because it just kind of like, it gives me different ideas about how to do. Sometimes you get stuck in doing things your own way. And sometimes if I set things up using a sketch, and if they have the rectangles all layered a certain way that's different than the way I would do it, I'll do it their way instead of my way. And then I get to try something new that I might not have thought of myself. So I guess if I think about it that way, I guess I would prefer elaborate ones if it includes the layers. The layers are kind of important for that aspect of doing sketches, but I really love all of the sketches. I like them a lot. So thank you guys so much. Anybody who's still with me at the 1 hour and 7 minute mark, which is actually probably 1 hour and 27 minutes. My goodness, I'm going to have to post this as at least 2 separate videos. Thank you guys so much for all of the interest that you guys have in what I'm doing and in wanting to hear answers to these. Many of these questions I have referred to the audience to weigh in on, so make sure you check out the comments for these videos. And also look at the information section below, because I'll have links to everything that we talked about here. If I have another video on my channel, I'll link it in this one, or if I know of another video. Okay, take care. Thanks so much for coming along with me for this ScrapChat today. Take care and have a really great scrappy week, everybody.